Disclaimer: an issue with Discord's connection during the recording of this episode resulted in members being completely unable to hear each other at various points throughout the podcast. There is a segment near the end of the recording where one member appears to be speaking over another member due to the aforementioned connection issue.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to my episode. I'm Ignitus Cosplay, Ignitus Creation. I'm here with Egg.
Hi.
I'm here with Lazari. I'm here with Kitten and Yummy.
Oh.
Say hi, everybody.
I said hi.
Hello.
Can you all hear me good? Yeah, okay. Hi.
Yeah.
So, today we are gonna talk about something that I'm pretty good at, but I don't know how our lads and lasses here are familiar with, which is mainly thrifting, pre-made cosplays, and sourcing garments. So we're gonna start mainly by what do you all think about, and how do you, in case, thrift pieces, fabrics, or direct entire whole costumes? What do you think, or how do you source them if you source them? We're gonna start with Egg.
So as far as sourcing goes, I'm very much of the opinion that if a character is wearing something that's pretty normal, like, I'm gonna pick on one character, Legoshi, for the most part his costume is pretty standard, so I think, in my personal opinion, it's probably more cost effective, and I'm gonna roll budgeting into this as well. It's more cost effective just to source actual garments. So like he wears a button down and a blue vest, and I know this because I helped somebody with this. It is way cheaper and more cost effective in the long run to buy an actual button down, an actual blue vest, and an actual pair of pants instead of paying like $85 to $100 on a cosplay. And while I know some cosplays, especially like commissioned cosplays, are made very well, they're made with good fabrics, a lot of the cosplays that you buy off the internet from like bigger cosplay retailers, they're made out of this like very similar polyester fabric, and it's a thick, it's like a heavier fabric. It's got good body to it, but you can tell it's not the type of fabric that you would make a garment that you'd get a lot of wear out of. So I think it's a really good idea, and that way if you are sourcing or thrifting items for characters instead of like, throwing money at the entire cosplay, then you have more money to spend in other places. So say you're cosplaying a character that has pretty normal clothing. I'm going to pick on every single troll from the Homestuck series, at least from the first part. Their clothes, for the most part, are pretty normal. It's like a black shirt of some iteration with that symbol on it, and regular pants or a skirt. I think the one with the most unusual skirt is Kanaya. Is that one right, Kid? It's Kanaya that has the red skirt, right?
For fairies is also pretty funky fresh.
Yeah. But, I mean, if you just source the pants and the shirt, paint the symbol on the shirt, then you have more money to spend on, like, the horns, which are going to be, because I've looked them up on Etsy. If you want to buy them, they're pretty expensive. And then I'm currently working on a character from the prequel series, and I had to buy a pattern, and I'm going to have to alter it, and the foam for that it's beginning to add up. But as far as thrifting goes, thrifting is nowhere near as cheap as it used to be, but it's still one of the less expensive options. I definitely think the best thing as far as thrifting goes, if you need a lot of yardage, is to go find bed sheets. Make sure you really, really wash them, as you should wash all fabric, because a lot of fabric has some stiffening in it while it's up on the bolt. But like, especially for dressing as a character from like Resident Evil or Silent Hill, that's not a monster. I mean, they're wearing pretty normal clothing, and you can even kind of rough up the clothing from a thrift store and it would look pretty convincing. I myself have, for one of my costumes, I used a bed skirt from my actual bed. I was switching them out, and I had this big piece of white fabric, and I'm like, well, that'd be a shame to throw away, because big yards, for cotton especially, yardage in a cold white cotton can be pretty expensive. So I just used that. But what about you guys? I think Laz is up next.
Yeah, so going to a thrift store, a lot of this will be talked from a crafting perspective, and also it is difficult as a larger cosplayer, plus size cosplayer, to just go buy straight sizes and cheap fast fashion clothing does not work as well as you want it to be. So when going to a thrift store, I'm mostly there looking at curtains again and bed sheets again, and they're usually just used for muslin. Sometimes they can work for a fabric. It all depends on what type of fabric it is and the colors. I pay a lot of attention to colors. I'm extremely color picky and texture picky. That's why, like, for me, I don't actually like going thrifting. I'd rather go thrifting for cosplay props instead, where I can find something that's going to resemble a really big stick and I can build on top of that. That's probably the best way if you don't want to go stop at Home Depot or Lowe's, even though it's also really cheap to go to those places and pick up a stick and pick up PVC. You never know what you'll find thrifting. Thrifting's also really good for accessories like jewelry and things like that. We can just paint over any sort of metallic and metal feels that you have. Let's see. Egg wanted to say something real quick. Go ahead.
So you're mentioning getting props, and I'm bringing this up because I had to do this for the base piece for when I go to make my Blackrock shooter cannon. I needed a very, very large tube, and to get something that big out of PVC is going to be expensive. The tube I got is about 5.5 feet tall, and a basket, you could probably fit a basketball into it. If you are looking for something like that, check out your post office, because a lot of times they will have like the big cardboard tubes that billboard pieces come in, and I only spent $3 getting that, when from other places like on Amazon it's like $80 to get a big mailing tube. So if you need stuff like that, definitely also check out the post office. If you're needing to source a lot of cardboard, that's another thing. If you go to retailers, like the day after the day that they get their truck to stock things, a lot of times they're going to have leftover cardboard, leftover pallets, things like that. I know Walmart especially has huge stacks of cardboard when their truck is there.
Yeah, I think going to retailers is definitely a much better idea than heading to the post office. I know the post office actually, at least around here, they got upset at cosplayers jacking their cardboard and stuff like that. So make sure...
I asked.
Exactly. Make sure that you ask that it's okay to take those sort of things, because they're there for mailing purposes. And you'll want to take those cardboard flat rate boxes and tubes for mailing purposes. Unless they're just super old and they're going to throw them out, then you need to talk to the post office, like, can I just take this? And
yeah,
more often than not, they might say yes, but if we have a huge surplus of people going to do that, that's not good. So going to Walmart and other huge retailers and just asking, hey, can I take some of your cardboard, is much, much better and much easier, especially because it's just going to get thrown out anyways. So why not take that cardboard and recycle it for prop making?
Can I just say something really quickly?
Sure.
yeah.
All right, so just like a little warning for everybody who is thinking about going to Walmart, we do have cardboard balers, and a lot of the cardboard that we do use ends up in the balers, so you do want to go on it fairly early in the day when the balers are not being used.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, that's good insight. I haven't worked retail in a good while, but that's definitely good to know. Get it before it goes into all the dirty things. So that's what that's what I assume when I walk into the store too, and like, hey, you're done with those boxes, that pile of boxes there that are still there sitting in the store as they're unpacking. Can I take them? That's usually the best thing. Most of the time, they're just going to say yes. So then back to sourcing as a plus size cosplayer. Thrift stores are not exactly your friend. Old clothing is probably your better friend, because you know that your clothing fit. You would take those, modify them. There's a lot of modifications. I think thrifting works out better in terms of finding props and things to make props than it does for clothing. Bed sheets are you're definitely a good friend, but again, you're going to be making a lot of things if you can't find something that's in a straight size that you know will fit. Wigs, I do a lot of repurposing, so I've bought wigs off of Amazon. Wigs are pretty cheap, thankfully, so you can buy wigs, splice them together, put them together, and make bigger ones, make ones that fit. If you go, again, back to retail, you could possibly go to a local wig supplier and see if they're throwing out any supplies and get those for free. You can go to art stores and check their clearance sections. If you go to Joann's sometimes too, I have seen them having clearances on their tubes of paints that usually run for $15-$20, those really big expensive oil tubes, and I have pulled them out of the bin for $2. Those are paints that are kind of close to expiring, but if you're going to use them, it's perfectly fine. Or there might be some small cosmetic damage on some of them too that they just need to get rid of it. So going to art stores, going to suppliers, checking for supplies that are not selling, they'll tend to give you like a major discount on those. Yeah.
Sorry, speaking of Joann's, I just want to point out one thing. Never underestimate the convenience of $1 pattern day.
Oh yeah, $1 pattern day is like the best thing in the world. When they do those patterns, go crazy. It's so worth it because honestly, that's the only time I ever bother to buy commercial patterns. Because there's no point in spending $20 on a pattern when you know they're going to come out and have the one catch is that there is a limit to those $1 pattern days, but it's kind of per store. So if you have a bunch of local Joann's nearby and you can hit up more than one,
Bring your friends.
We don't have Joann's in Canada. We only do have Fabricland. So those membership cards have saved me a lot of money. If you are planning on doing a bunch of sewing, invest in a membership card. Even if you don't think you're gonna need it, you're basically saving yourself like $40, $50 a trip.
Oh, that's good to know. And that's also good. Make sure you sign up for those emails for like Joann's and your other stores. Those stores, those competitor craft stores, they all will honor each other's coupons. So if you've got a 60% off for Michael's and Joann's doesn't have that 60% off, guess what? They'll take that 60% off from Michael's and vice versa. It is very nice. So become like the queens of couponing and deals, the kings and queens of coupons and deals. Those are going to be your best friend in making sure that you can put budgeting and put your cosplays together without having to break your bank.
On the topic of patterns,
sorry for cutting you off.
It's okay.
Before we can diverge into patterns and whatnot, we're gonna go to Yami.
Yeah. Okay. So, going back to the old man thing. I mean, back when I first got into this hobby, I was told that thrifting was like the best way to get a cosplay done, because back then there was a lot, cosplays weren't as easy to find today. We didn't have like AliExpress or all these like 500 different cosplay sites, so we were very limited in terms of how we can get cosplays. So people would either thrift or just hand make everything from scratch. Similar to Lass was saying, I personally have never had good luck thrifting, and I don't know if it's maybe it's the whole plus size thing, or at least I thought maybe I was just having bad luck, but I guess maybe it's just a plus size thing. So as far as sourcing stuff goes, right? I think that's what you guys call it. I've had decent luck with that. Like I know like I mentioned earlier, buying a white button-up shirt was actually one thing I had to do. Back when I did Okita from Gintama, I went to Walmart and just got a white button-up shirt, and that was already part of a costume. You could buy random black shirts or whatever. In fact, all of this, basically like most of it, my Shigaraki outfit from My Hero. I mean, like I got a lot of it from a store. From literally like his stuff is pretty much just sweatpants and a sweatshirt, and Nagito Komaeda pretty much just bought the shirt with the actual design off like Redbubble, and again, like Spirit Halloween and Party City, sometimes you can find good stuff there too, or basically just any Halloween store in general. I know I found some gloves for some costumes and fangs, and if you need like face paint last minute, even though it's not the best quality, like sometimes eyeliner is even better, but hey, if you need something specific, as a last minute thing, I mean, it's better than nothing, you know.
Yami, really sorry to interrupt you, but Egg wanted to say a disclaimer. Go ahead, Egg.
Not to like sound like I'm shaming anybody who's going on Redbubble, but I think it needs to be said that if you are going to buy off of Redbubble, yes, there's a lot of people who have their legit stuff on there, but you also want to do some research because unfortunately stolen art is a problem on sites like that. Redbubble in particular comes up a lot, so make sure if you're looking for stuff, especially something that would probably be licensed, that you're just being careful not to engage in any kind of art theft, because that's not cool. And especially if it's like a design ripped off of a smaller creator, that's extra not cool. But yeah, just definitely do your research on stuff like that. Any kind of website like Redbubble, even Etsy, I've seen has some reposted stuff. It doesn't stolen stuff. It doesn't stay up very long, but that's definitely something you want to keep an eye out. Sorry for cutting in.
Want to say anything else?
That's it.
Yeah. Well, okay. I just want to add to the Redbubble thing. Not that I disagree with you, but part of the issue is like finding my size is not easy, and Redbubble is one of the few places that that I'm able to find my size in. You know, I'm not saying hey, you know, support art theft, but it's just like I'm very limited in terms of options.
You know, you make a valid point.
Means, if you can find sizes or things on one site only, go for it. Just be sure that it's something that is, you know, legal. That's everything that it was said.
I mean, as far as that sort of thing goes, you're right, Yami. Generally speaking, in terms of the art theft, the discussion is more so don't take money away from creators that it should be going to, but if they're not making, if a creator is not making something that you can feasibly use, then you were not going to buy from them anyway. Ergo, technically speaking, you are not, this is a hot take, you're not actually taking away money from somebody you would never have bought from in the first place. It's still it's one of the real hazy gray area type things. A lot of people like to treat it like it's black and white, but it really is not, and I do apologize. I completely forgot about that point. Sorry about that, Yami.
It's fine. Like you know, your point is perfectly valid. Like, you know, art theft should be supported. It's just, I mean, I do actually check the people that I buy from. You know, I check their profile, and a lot of them are artists. You know, they literally have like their social media link there. They're like, hey, you know, here's my Instagram or whatever and stuff like that. So I think I've done pretty good avoiding that. I mean, and again, the Nagito shirt is pretty much just a Danganronpa thing. It's not like, no, it's not like a shirt some small artist designed and then they're like, oh, you know, here's my art. It's something that there's probably millions of different like Nagito shirts on the internet with that same design, and you know, it's from a big company and all that. You know, it's like Soft. I think that's what they're called.
Right, Soft. I know.
Yeah.
I know them. So next we have Kitten. You wanna enlighten us with some of your
my cat wiseness here. For me, like, a lot of my thrifting has come out like around Halloween was the best time to do it, especially costume wise, because, like, you know, you get all those better made Halloween costumes from years previous, because they seem to get like crappier and crappier as things go on. But it's also really nice because a lot of the stuff I do is stuff like, you know, Dead by Daylight and like main protagonists of like Resident Evil series, where a lot of them are regular clothes. So for me, that's a little bit easier. That being said, again, I'm another plus size person, and it is hard, and I sometimes I do have to kind of look to fast fashion sites. I don't support fast fashion, but again, it's something that I can afford, that's kind of cheap, and that carries my size. A lot of things that I think I struggle with, as well as some of the other creators on this podcast, is finding like plus sizes. So it's harder for me to thrift for those kind of things than it is anything else. And all I have to say on the matter is, like, thrifting is a great source for a lot of people, just not some people.
Okay.
If you are going to go thrifting, for during specific times of the year. If you want to get the biggest bang for your buck, keep an eye on when people will ditch certain wardrobes. So like at the very beginning of spring, people will get rid of their winter wardrobe. And then at the end of summer, they'll get rid of their spring and summer wardrobe. And that's when you're going to get a massive influx of clothing. I will say one thing I have also noticed in thrifting is clothing, or quote-unquote women's clothing, seems to be... There's a lot more of it. I don't see as many quote-unquote men's clothing in thrift stores. It's a lot of women's clothing. So that may be a little more difficult if you are looking for quote-unquote men's clothing.
So on that note, I will actually tell my own, because I started my cosplay career by thrifting. A lot of the costume that I made was made through modifying clothes, and I can tell that it doesn't matter what you look for, even if it's a woman's type of clothing, for example like coats, overcoats, waistcoats, or shirts. Sometimes women's shirts have a kind of a flair. You know, they have a particular color that you might like. They have some flaring bits on the cuffs. Thrifting is one of those things that if you know what you're looking for and you know where to go, you will have an amazing time with, one, the thrill of the hunt, because thrifting is essentially a hunt for something. So there is that. Plus there is the beauty of repurposing something that essentially was about to be thrown away because it's old, nobody wants it, but you want it. You transform it in something new. I have a total of 5 coats that I wear even daily, and all of those 5 coats are female clothing. So it's not much of an issue on that point. But what I want to say especially is when you, like, I think either Kitten or you, Egg, said that Halloween costumes are getting cheaper and cheaper. No. We are getting, like, kids nowadays are getting so lucky. I've seen pictures of new brands, new elements that are bringing in a new game for cosplaying. Like, there is whole ass Naruto, there is My Hero Academia, which are gonna be a lower quality, but they're still better. I remember a long time ago that you would get a really, really bad costume, like for example Jaws. You would get like essentially a shirt saying Jaws and a fake ass like headpiece. What happened?
I will say one thing about, I know Kit was the one that said it, in terms of Halloween costumes getting worse and worse, the variety is getting better, but the materials that they're using in comparison to the price, because they're getting more and more expensive every year. I mean, if they were using better materials each year, that would validate in some way, shape, or form the price. But, I mean, anybody who's bought a Halloween costume knows that weird slippery fabric that 90% of them are made out of.
I don't enjoy spending like $80 on a, like, you know, short little, like, sexy nurse costume when I bought my Mekon one for, you know, like 40, and the quality is way better than any like short, you know, sexy little dress that you wear on Halloween. Like, it's just them trying to make money at this point, you know?
I will say one thing that these newer, not so great ones are made for. The not so great ones, they do have one specific advantage, and that is if you go right after Halloween, a lot of the seasonal Halloween stores will run a big sale to get rid of everything that they have, because they're basically just, they're seasonal pop-ups. They have to sell enough to make the rent on the space that they took up. Even though the quality of the fabric they're using is getting worse, I haven't seen where they're really altering the patterns, and so that is a totally legit thing to do. Is to take a Halloween costume that's been discounted or a garment, and you can tear it apart, like seam rip it, pull it apart, and take the pattern. And while that does sound kind of sketch, it's legitimately what pattern companies do. I'm going to bring in copyright again, even though I already brought it up with the Redbubble thing. In terms of copyright, nobody owns a specific, like, design. So, like, nobody owns the shape of a t-shirt. Nobody owns the raglan style shirt. That's kind of that's more of a open source. That's not the right word, but that's the only thing I can think of. But if you want to learn how to draft patterns, it's not the correct way, and you will still have to look up or take some lessons on actual pattern drafting, but you can get started by getting some of these cheaper options and reverse engineering them. I did that for a pair of boot covers. I had purchased some really, really cheap bad ones off of the internet, and I took them apart, figured out what the pattern pieces were and how they went together, and then I just recut the boot covers out of a different type of fabric. And I will say, like, that's not as wasteful as it sounds, because I was not going to wear the cheap ones. They were going to fall apart. But if in some ways those are pattern pieces that are going to last you way longer than the tissue paper kind. And while I am not quite as plus sized as I used to be, I was at one point at a size where a lot of cosplays did not fit me, and that's even like regular Halloween costumes, and that saved my butt a couple of times, being able to get something like that, take it apart, and then it's really easy for costumes that have more square pattern pieces. When you start getting into curves and stuff, you're gonna have to work in geometry to that, and I cannot help you there, but it did help a lot being able to take apart a pattern, take apart a garment, resize the pieces, and then put something together that I could actually wear.
Alright. Another thing that I want to ask is, what do you think about... Actually, that's it. That's all
You left out altering sourced garments.
You already essentially, like, explained the whole thing.
That's not altering, though. That's just taking things apart. That's reverse engineering. Altering and reverse engineering are technically different.
I'll join in a little bit more on this, as Egg is explaining.
Yeah, I want to ask about altering sources, garments. What's the good part of it? What's the worst part of it? Is it viable, or is it not?
So I'll go in on... Yeah, so I'll go in on this one with alterations. So the best way to start with alterations is honestly get something that's bigger, because it's easier to size it down. That's a lot easier than reverse engineering, as Egg was previously talking about. Those are the harder alterations. The easier ones are sizing it down and adding onto things and building upon a blank garment or something that just needs a few more details, versus something that you need to take away some details and remove take away details and insert details. Like if you had to rip apart a seam in order to put like a different type of color into that seam, because say there was like a triangular piece of blue inside something, which it's been around. And what I did, which was for Yami's Shigaraki hands, was we thrifted those hands and essentially added on paint and repainted the entire thing. So it was like the best thing to do. It was a lot easier than having to make hands from scratch. It was just get the hands and paint them over and spend how many hours I spent, I don't even know, just painting them and adding in details and adding the paint.
Okay, I have a question. Where do you thrift hands? Like, that's
there's always the llama way.
It was Spirit Halloween.
The llama way. I'm not explaining that joke, by the way.
Yeah, sorry to cut you guys off, but
no, you're good.
To answer Kitten's question, yeah, Spirit Halloween really got them, like, when was it, like November 1st, or whenever they have like their deal, because they're closing for the year. Yeah, basically I just went in there and just purchased every single hand they had in stock. And in fact, wait, actually,
You need a hand.
was it me or last? Last was it you who purchased it? I don't remember.
I don't remember. Whatever.
Okay.
We were together when we bought them.
Okay, because I know I bought some hands. I know that much. I don't remember if I bought all of them or not.
That takes catching these hands to a whole new level.
Yeah.
It's good.
In fact, I think we had to go to more than one store for this. I feel like we didn't get enough the first time.
Yeah, I think we needed like 1 or 2 more packets of hands.
Weird thing to say.
I imagine this too. Yummy! Why are these old hands here?
In fact, I still think I actually have a pack of those hands still left, like unopened.
Damn.
You
Okay.
should just like send them to somebody in the mail randomly, or just like put them on someone's front doorstep to scare them.
Give me your address, Kitten. I'm gonna send it to your house.
Please don't.
Let's continue on with either Lazary or Kitten or Yummy on the topic. So Lazary, if you have more to say.
Yeah, just sizing down is a lot easier than reconstructing things. Personally, I end up having to just completely remake things. I don't remember the last time I have physically thrifted clothing for cosplay. In fact, I end up repurposing fabric that I bought for one project and realized I don't want it for that project anymore. That project gets scrapped and I go put it to another project. But honestly, it's also a good thing because it makes you think resourcefully, because now I went from Saber from Fate Grand Order to Jean from Genshin Impact, which it's the same fabric, but it's going to get used differently and it's still going to come out great. It was the exact same colors that I needed. Little variation in what I thought I wanted for Jean's, her fabric type that she wants, but at the same time, after I put it on the dress form and I'm like trying to envision it, I'm like, yeah, this will be good. So always repurposing fabrics and things that you have help a lot, and it doesn't even cost any money after you've already bought it. Or getting things like hand-me-downs. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I've got this whole box here and it was just hand-me-downs from other seamstresses, and that's another thing you can do is get people's leftover stuff. So like yard sales and stuff are also really probably good to go to.
Friends and family too, like once they find out that you sew, they will give you like their old wedding dresses and prom dresses that they're not going to wear anymore because they know that you'll be able to use it for something. I had like 3 people's wedding dresses that I never even ended up using. I ended up gutting it all for like the crinoline and then never using the rest of it, so it all went to kind of to other friends who sew.
The nice thing about some of the hand-me-downs that you can get, especially with prom and bridal gowns, is the fabric those are made out of is often much nicer than what a lot of people can buy. And as far as on the subject of getting fabric, a lot of groups with cosplayers, I know our group has one, but I'm sure there are Facebook groups where you can exchange fabric with other cosplayers that either you're not going to use or they're not going to use. At least I think that's a thing, because I know that's a thing here. And another big important thing is on the subject of yard sales. A lot of times, and I'm going to stereotype grandmas here, a lot of times little old ladies will have sewing kits. But as far as back to the altering part, it's easier to alter something when you are just like switching out a sleeve or sort of opening a side seam. On the topic of sleeves, though, I highly recommend, if you're going to thrift or make it yourself, that you should have this is saying in all caps, the sewing kits that were supposed to be cookies, the universal experience.
I found those cookies at Dollarama yesterday and I made that joke. I was like, that's weird. They're selling cookies in the sewing supplies tin.
I refuse to believe that cookies ever went in those tins. I refuse. No. But, and this is a totally different topic, but I recommend, if you're going to thrift, if you're going to make it, that you have it's called a sleeve block or a bodice block, and that's just like a basic pattern that fits you, that you can expand or put back together. Sleeves, that's the easiest thing to do with them, considering sleeves are horrible, but definitely get things like that. Another good thing that you can thrift, and this is moving on from clothing, older sewing machines.
Oh yes.
I cannot express how much nicer some older sewing machines are than some of the modern ones. I have a Fortuna from the 70s that sews so well, so very well. And it holds up better than a lot of my modern machines. Now, if you're willing to spend a little bit more on a modern machine, it should be better, but even thrifting equipment even is perfectly valid, especially if you're starting out. What do you think, Laz, about thrifting things like sewing machines?
Yeah, those are really useful. But the thing about getting thrifted sewing machines is you are probably going to need to have those serviced. Even if they're hand-me-down machines, sometimes they might not work. There's a reason sometimes when they're hand-me-downs or they're thrifted, they were given away just because people didn't want to put in the effort to make sure that it works. So you might end up having to spend an extra cost to take those machines to a shop and have them serviced. If they're from someone you trust and you know that the machine is still working pretty well and you got that, then great, good for you. But I would always be iffy with it's not like super iffy. It's just, it can be a 50-50 if you get a good machine or not. In Goodwill, they have auctions on Goodwill. I forgot about this too. Auctions on Goodwill. You can see all the sewing machines that they have, and that's like a gold mine because you can get those sewing machines for just dollars, like less than $10 for sewing machines. That's amazing to go to. And touching back, because Egg finally reminded me as well, with the Facebook groups, those are great. Those cosplay, buy, trade, and sell. That is literally the great name of the group, cosplay, buy, trade, sell. That is a wonderful group, a wonderful resource. People are trading and selling things all the time, getting rid of wigs, getting rid of Arta wigs, which are discounted, so you don't have to spend over $30 on a wig. You'll spend a little less, closer to $20 for a high quality wig. And there are specific groups as well for plus size, so plus size cosplayers as well, in which a lot of those plus size cosplayers have probably also they're selling their already thrifted cosplay that they modified for you. So you just you might modify it again if they were too big, or you might modify it again that you didn't like some of the alterations. It's just a good spot. It's really good to utilize your social media and utilize your Facebook groups. Depop as well as another place you can go buy secondhand cosplays and things like that.
I will say definitely though, if you get a cosplay that doesn't fit you, back to the Facebook thing, there are people who will alter them for you if you are willing to pay that. But Iggy, you were saying something, sorry.
Going back on the thrifting of tools and whatnot. A long time ago, we're talking about probably the 60s, maybe even the 90s. Things were made not to with warranty to not break immediately. Like I have my own sewing machine, but that sewing machine was $100 and it still broke. So essentially what happened is essentially that many times when you find a thrifted tool, like for example a sewing machine, there might be a high chance that it's made to last. And I helped a friend to put a machine back to work because it was perfectly fine, just needed a new cable to plug into the wall. We have to say bye to Kitten. They went away for the night, so I guess that's we're gonna do some off-topic talking, and then we're gonna say bye. So we're gonna go with Yami. They wanted to say something.
Hey, Yami, what was that thing that you were wanting to talk about earlier?
Oh, okay. Well, one thing I wanted to mention. Yeah, like the Facebook groups are good resources, but I'm in the plus size cosplayers one too, and no, I never really see a lot of like cosplay options there for men, and I get it that this hobby doesn't really have a lot of men to begin with, but so I get that, but yeah, that's one of the that realities for me because I can never find anything on the cheaper end, like in the group. Yeah. And as far as I just want to bring up Lass's Saber and Jean thing. I mean, Jean is basically just a Genshin Impact Saber. Let's be real here.
Kind of true, kind of true. That's also what reminded me, hey, I have all this fabric sitting around and I should still use it. And I think even after making jean, like once I get through, I'm still going to have leftover fabric. I bought like an excessive amount for Saber, but it's a very nice fabric, a nice, lovely four-way stretch velvet. I can't wait to use it.
But yeah, you were saying about men's cosplays not coming up as frequently as women's cosplays do. I've noticed that just in general, you don't see nearly as much secondhand men's clothing. So I don't think that's something entirely unique to just cosplays. But then again, if you go to a department store and you look at the men's section compared to the women's section, there's not as much clothing there.
That's
And
a
I
good
cannot be-
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
Unless you're going to like one of the bigger stores that has like a section just for suits. There's a lot of suits. But yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
Go
like
ahead.
sorry about that. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, but yeah, on that subject, like, yeah, I've even tried asking in the group myself, being like, hey, does anybody have like cosplays for sale from this series? And I've gotten like no responses. So I'm just like, oh, okay, well, I guess then, I guess I'll just have to go and buy a brand new one or something.
Yeah. Oof. I will say another important thing, totally off topic, but sort of on topic since we're talking about buying cosplays. I recommend highly, regardless of what size you are, that you know your measurements in centimeters. Centimeters especially. Inches as well, but mostly centimeters because a lot of cosplays you buy online are made outside the United States, so they're going to be listed in centimeters. And don't take your measurements like once a year and just go with it, because, like I said, regardless of what size you are, your measurements are going to fluctuate. So you want to take your measurements somewhat frequently, every couple of months at least, so that way you know kind of what you're looking for. And as far as sizing goes, I just want everybody out there to know, don't feel bad if you are unable to fit into a lot of the bigger retailer cosplays. They are made smaller, and that's probably because of where a lot of them are made. Clothes in general in that part of the world are a little bit smaller. So, yeah, I mean, I'll see something that says 5XL with a bust measurement of like 102 centimeters. And for anybody who doesn't know, 102 centimeters is approximately what would fit somebody with a 39-inch bust with room to breathe. And that'll be the 5XL. So they're just small in general. So you don't even have to be like by American standards plus size to not fit in some of these things. And that's not your fault. I would definitely say, though, if you are looking at plus size cosplays, and some of them will be listed plus size, don't outright assume that the measurements are going to be as forgiving as the term plus size would make you think, because they're probably not going to be. And a lot of times, some of the more high-end, quote-unquote, cosplay retailers are better about this, but a lot of times when they make plus-size clothing, all they do is take the pattern and just kind of blow it up bigger, which is not at all how you should make a plus-size garment. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of geometry involved with it, and certain curves on the garment have to be completely adjusted to properly fit somebody. So you want to definitely always read the reviews if you're looking for something like that, because they're not going to lie to you. And if you're looking at reviews, you always want to look for worn photos, because that's going to give you the truest idea of how this is going to look, potentially how it's going to fit, and just from a glance, the quality. Have you had that same kind of experience, Yami?
Yeah, actually, a lot. In fact, every time I buy a cosplay, I'm usually disappointed. I mean, even when they're listed as like bigger sizes, even sometimes it's even like my exact measurements, pretty much. Like, Last can kind of confirm this, because Normally she's the one who does my measurements because it's kind of hard for me to get everything by myself. But yeah, no, like honestly, there's literally maybe one seller I can think of that I have had very few problems with, if any. Which is very unfortunate and kind of sad because yeah, it's just buying cosplays isn't very plus size friendly overall. Like, if I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, it's, I suppose, cheaper to make smaller garments. And that's another thing, speaking about how different brands have completely different sizing. That's a struggle here in the United States, which is the only place I can talk for sure about it, is sizing is not consistent here, and it is not consistent in... I'm into a Japanese fashion style, so I do buy a lot of clothing from Japan, South Korea, and China, and the size consistency is non-existent. What is a 2XL in one brand may be a 5XL in another, and what is a medium and quote-unquote medium in the United States is like a 5XL in some of these other brands. That's just unfortunately how things are going. I think, however, the more people who are plus size show an active interest in these, that the market might change. It's going sort of that way for the J fashion that I'm into, because above all things, these companies want to make money, and if they see a market that looks like it will be profitable, they're going to go for it.
I hope so. I'm sorry about
You're
that.
good. You're good.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing. It's literally every time I buy a new cosplay, it's always a gamble. It's like, even if I give my exact measurements, even if I add, extra inches to it, somehow it still never seems to work out. I mean, so sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but generally it doesn't. So it's like I said, every time I do it, it's a gamble.
Yeah, definitely one thing that I've had to learn pretty quickly is that sometimes the measurements listed are in reference to the garment itself, and sometimes they're in reference to the actual measurements of a human body. And you want to make sure that you are looking for that difference, and if it's not stated, it's perfectly acceptable to email the brand and ask them, hey, is this, the sizes you have listed, are they the size of the garment or the size of the person who should be able to fit into it? Because there is a 4 to 7 centimeter discrepancy that you want to have to be able to properly breathe. And so if you buy something that looks like it's your measurements, like, say, like your bust is like 102 centimeters, and you buy something that says, 102 centimeters. If it's the garment's maximum measurement is 102 centimeters, you're not going to be able to wear it because it's skin tight and you can't breathe. And then for custom sizing is a gamble to begin with. That's the time that it's honestly better off just commissioning somebody who has a pretty good portfolio. I've seen several people on Etsy that have stunning portfolios, and mind you, their stuff is more expensive, but it's pretty much a you get what you pay for kind of situation, and if it's going to be really good, I personally don't mind paying for it. But there's usually like a 2 to 3 inch, so that same kind of 4 to 7 centimeter discrepancy in how the garment is going to turn out. And usually they say that, sometimes they don't, but I would say definitely if you're ordering stuff to be custom sized, that you should just automatically assume that it's going to be that couple centimeter discrepancy. What about you, Les?
Don't say that. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say don't say that, because like like Les knows, I'm waiting on a costume that I ordered. It was custom size. Again, it's a gamble. It's a site I've never ordered from before, but I did see somebody in one of the plus size groups say, hey, I've ordered from this site before and I've had pretty good luck with them, and their measurements were similar to mine. So I was like, okay, it sounds like a good gamble. So I went for it, but and again, custom size. So I just hope it works out.
Be out for that one.
Pretty quickly.
I mean, if
Really
they've already
quickly.
done something in a similar size, it's probably a higher likelihood that it will fit at least a little bit better. It's the sites you want to watch for as far as custom sizing are the ones that have no evidence of ever having made a plus size garment, because it takes some skill to sew in the first place, but to properly grade, and that's what it's called when you change the size of a pattern, to properly grade a pattern up to a plus size, it's not easy. It takes a lot of know-how, and it's a very it's a particular skill set that you need.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good
So
point.
if I can say the last thing,
Already,
I don't know.
Iggy, you want to say something?
So here in Italy, since we are like kind of like
Okay. Silence from the Peanut Gallery. Laz, what about you?
Oh, I mean, no, let Iggy say what he wanted to say. I'm fine not saying anything right now.
no, I think they can't hear me.
Oh, we can hear you now. At least I can.
Yeah, I can
can't
hear
for once.
Iggy. I heard Iggy from like when he first tried to say something before Egg.
Okay. So yeah, gonna leave a couple of minutes so you can edit
There-
this out. So there's a thing here in Italy, which is usually because we are a population of tailors and seamstresses. That is, if you want something well done, when you make a garment that is quote unquote costume, aka tailored, you really need to actually be there to try it and see how much you need to give, how much you need to take away. So essentially, there's a huge problem here is that the only places that do cosplay stuff is not even cosplay stuff, it's more like Halloween and carnival stuff, and they will do a poor job at it. Is a couple of roads here in Italy that sell this stuff. We don't have like Spirit Halloween and all of this stuff. We have barely mask places and costume places, so you end up usually with a subpar product. And when you try online, it's still the gamble, because places like Cosplay Sky or CosDaddy or stuff like that usually end up being pretty costly, and the gamble at times is not worth it. And usually, by the way, this is for Yami. Well, usually male garments are meant to like be tighter. They're meant to be much like, if for example a jacket or stuff like that, usually they're supposed to like be adhering to the body, so there is even less room to breathe compared to a female garment. There's that. Egg, you wanted to say something?
I'm sorry, I have to refute that one thing about women's clothing being not that tight. Yeah. I will say one thing for anybody who's out there listening, that we are currently doing a fundraiser to put Iggy in a box and ship him to the United States, so if you'd like to contribute, you can go ahead and do that. And I'm only 75% joking. Hashtag send Iggy to the United States 2021.
2022, the year is over.
Yeah, maybe to like Ohio or one of those places that don't exist.
I
have friends there.
Wyoming doesn't exist.
This is Ohio.
No, Ohio exists. Wyoming definitely doesn't. Montana doesn't. Both Dakotas, they argue about each other, like which Dakota is the better Dakota. Y'all both don't exist. If you're like the North Mideast, you don't exist. You get blended into Canada after a certain point.
Idaho doesn't exist
what
either.
doesn't exist, and I hope will never exist? Detroit. And with that, we're gonna close the episode. Thank you for listening. I was your host of the day. We had Egg, we had Lazari, we had Yami. So welcome, Yami. I hope you had a beautiful time with us. Well,
I had a really wonderful time, but like I said, hashtag ship Iggy to the United States 2021.
good night, everybody.
Bye.